Sophia's hands trembled as she wiped the counter. She had just served a man who seemed like just another customer at first. But when their eyes met, something shifted in the air. It was heavy, unshakable. Who was this man? Was he really just another diner guest? Or was something far bigger unfolding before her eyes? This wasn't just any customer. He held the key to everything Sophia was about to lose. Sophia never went looking for trouble. She didn't make waves, didn't pick fights, and believed in showing up, doing her job, and treating people with kindness. It was how she was raised. Work hard, respect others, and keep your head down when things got messy. But sometimes doing the right thing comes with consequences, and tonight, Sophia was about to learn that the hard way. For almost 3 years, the Sunrise Diner had been Sophia's second home. It wasn't anything special, just a small joint on the east side of Springfield, tucked between a gas station and a laundromat. The kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee, families gathered for Sunday breakfast, and the staff learned your order before your name. The hours were long, the pay was lousy, and management didn't care. Yet Sophia stayed. She had to. Her rent was already too high for a one-bedroom, and her younger brother, Liam, was in his second year of college. He had no idea she helped cover his textbooks and groceries when their mom couldn't. Sophia never told him. She just sent a little extra when she could. That's why she took double shifts, endured rude customers, and worked alongside coworkers who saw kindness as a weakness. The diner had its dark side, too. Sophia had witnessed it over and over. The way Emma, a senior waitress, treated certain customers like ghosts while laughing and flirting with others. Alex, a newer server, had a habit of avoiding certain tables altogether. The energy of the restaurant would shift the moment someone walked through the door. A well-dressed businessman, smiles and conversation. A working-class customer in paint-stained clothes, rushed service. And if a customer looked like they wouldn't tip well, some staff didn't even bother trying. Sophia hated it. But calling out? That was a risk she couldn't afford. She learned that lesson a few months ago when she casually mentioned that a table had been waiting too long. Emma, scrolling through her phone by the counter, shot her a glare and said, "You don't get paid extra for being a saint, Sophia." Since then, Sophia kept her head down. Until tonight. It was a slow Wednesday. The dinner rush had come and gone. Sophia was refilling sugar dispensers when the bell above the door jingled. An older man walked in. His clothes were clean but worn. Nothing fancy, just a simple button-up and slacks. He carried himself with quiet confidence. But Sophia caught the slight hesitation in his step as he scanned the room before walking forward. She knew that look. She'd seen it before in customers who already knew what kind of welcome, or lack of one, they were about to receive. And sure enough, the reaction was immediate. Emma, still glued to her phone, didn't even glance up. Alex, who had been joking with another server, stopped mid-sentence. The atmosphere in the diner shifted, and Sophia felt the weight of it pressing down. Something was about to happen. Something big. And after tonight, nothing in Sophia's life would ever be the same again. It was eerily silent. The usual chatter and clanging of pans were gone, replaced by a stillness that made Sophia's skin crawl. As she stepped inside, her footsteps seemed unnaturally loud against the linoleum floor. She glanced around. No sign of Emma or Alex at their usual spot by the counter. The kitchen door was closed, and not even the faintest sound came from behind it. Mark emerged from the back office, his expression unreadable. He stopped in front of her, arms crossed. "Sophia," he said, voice clipped. Her heart pounded. "Morning, Mark," she replied, forcing a smile. "Is something wrong?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied her with the kind of intensity that made her want to shrink away. Finally, he said, "I need to talk to you in my office." Sophia's stomach dropped, but she nodded and followed him. As she stepped into the small, cramped office, the door clicked shut behind her. Mark gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing. "You served that man last night," Mark began. "Yes, I did," she confirmed. "Was there a problem?" Mark's gaze sharpened. "He's been in before. Emma and Alex told me he's trouble. Trouble." Sophia frowned. "He didn't do anything. He just wanted dinner like any other customer." Mark sighed, rubbing his temples. Look, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, but we have a certain way of doing things here. And sometimes it's best to just follow along. Sophia's fists clenched at her sides. So, because Emma and Alex didn't want to serve him, I should have ignored him too? Mark's silence was answer enough. No, Sophia said firmly. That's not right. I won't treat someone differently just because. The office door opened abruptly. Emma stepped in, arms folded and smirking. Problem. Sophia turned to her, fire burning in her chest. Yes, the problem is how we're treating people here. Mark stood up, holding up a hand. That's enough, Sophia. Let's not make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Sophia met his eyes, unwavering. It's already a big deal, and it's not going to change unless someone speaks up. Emma snorted. Good luck with that. Without another word, Sophia turned on her heel and walked out. As she left the office, she didn't know what would happen next. Maybe she had to sign her own walking papers. Maybe her life at Sunrise Diner would be harder than ever. But one thing was certain. She had made her choice. And no matter what came next, she wouldn't regret it. Something fell off. Emma wasn't leaning against the counter like she usually did. Alex wasn't making coffee or cracking jokes with the cooks. Instead, both stood silently, watching Sophia. Emma wore a sly smile, and Alex had his arms crossed. Neither said a word. Sophia tightened her grip on her apron. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Suddenly, the creak of a door broke the silence. Mark appeared in the doorway of his office, looking at her as if he'd been waiting. His voice was flat, emotionless. Sophia, come with me. A pit of unease settled in her stomach. What's this about? She asked, but Mark offered no answer. He turned and walked back into his office. Sophia took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and followed him. The office was cramped, cluttered with papers and coffee-stained surfaces. A file lay open on his desk, but Mark didn't look at it. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. We're letting you go, he said. The words landed like a slap. Sophia blinked, struggling to process what she had just heard. What? It's not working out, Mark said, his expression unchanged. Her heart pounded. Not working out? She let out a humorless laugh. I've been here almost 3 years. Never missed a shift. Never been late. Mark sighed, as though tired of the conversation. It's a decision we've made. We? Sophia's throat tightened. She knew what that meant. This is because of last night, isn't it? Mark didn't confirm it, but his silence was enough. Sophia's face flushed with heat. So, I get fired for doing my job? You can collect your final paycheck next week, Mark said, as if that was the end of it. No warning, no explanation, just dismissed. Sophia clenched her fists, but knew arguing was pointless. She untied her apron and sat on the chair. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door and forced herself to look back. You know this isn't right, she said, her voice steady. Mark didn't flinch. Sophia shook her head and walked out. Back in the dining area, Emma stood near the counter, her smirk now a full-blown grin. Alex pretended to wipe down a table, not even bothering to hide his satisfaction. They had been waiting for this. Sophia's face burned, not from embarrassment, but from anger. She wanted to call them out, to demand how they could be so heartless. But she wouldn't give them the satisfaction. She lifted her chin, walked past them without a word, and pushed through the doors into the cold morning air. For the first time in 3 years, she had no job, no paycheck, no backup plan. She climbed into her car, slammed the door, and gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Her breaths came in short bursts. How would she pay rent? Help Liam with his groceries? How would she? Her phone buzzed. She ignored it at first, her thoughts spiraling as she stared blankly at the windshield. Then she glanced at the screen. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering with a trembling hand. Hello. A deep, steady voice replied. Sophia, this is Daniel Carter. Sophia frowned. I'm sorry, who? The man you served last night at Sunrise Diner. Her breath hitched. Oh yes, sir. How can I help you? There was a pause. Then Daniel said, I heard what happened. Sophia's stomach twisted. Of course, he had. News traveled fast. The person who had discarded her. Sophia's hands trembled as she tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dead serious," Daniel confirmed. "I wouldn't make this offer lightly. You've shown more integrity in 3 years than some have shown in their entire careers. That's what I need in a manager." Her mind raced. Could she really step into this role? Could she run a place that had just tried to bury her? The weight of the offer pressed down on her chest, but so did something else. A spark of defiance, a flicker of hope. "You're offering me a chance to fix what's broken," Sophia said slowly, the gravity of the situation settling over her. Daniel's voice softened. "I'm offering you a chance to make it your own." The words hung in the air like a lifeline. Her pulse thudded in her ears, but beneath the nerves, a steely determination began to rise. She'd spent 3 years working hard, keeping her head down. Maybe it was time to stand tall. "I'll do it," she said at last, her voice steadier than she felt. "But on one condition." "Name it," Daniel said without hesitation. "I want full authority to run things my way. No interference." Daniel chuckled lightly. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say." Sophia exhaled, feeling the weight of the past few hours lift ever so slightly. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to find out. "Welcome back, manager," Daniel said warmly. And just like that, Sunrise Diner wasn't just a job anymore. It was her chance to start over. Sophia sat in her car, staring at her phone. The man who had fired her. She took a slow breath. "What do you say?" Daniel's voice was calm but firm. Sophia hesitated. She could still hear Emma's mocking voice, Alex's smug silence, and Mark's dismissive tone. They had counted her out, thought they had gotten rid of her for good. But now, she had a chance to become the force of change they never saw coming. Sophia lifted her chin, gripping the phone tightly. "I'll do it," she said. Daniel let out a satisfied breath. "Good. Come in tomorrow morning. You start at 8. Sophia nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I'll be there." She hung up, sat in stunned silence for a moment, and gripped the steering wheel as the reality sank in. Less than a day ago, she had walked out of Sunrise Diner with nothing. Tomorrow, she would be walking back in as the boss, and she wasn't coming to play nice. The sharp morning air bit through Sophia's clothes as she stood outside Sunrise Diner, gripping her bag strap. She had spent all night thinking about this moment. Yesterday, she had walked out of this building with no job, no explanation, and no respect. Today, she was stepping back in with something Emma, Alex, and Mark had never imagined. Power. Sophia inhaled deeply, squared her shoulders, and pushed open the door. The familiar scent of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air. Customers were scattered across booths, the hum of conversation blending with the clinking of forks and the soft sound of a radio in the background. At first, no one noticed her. Then Emma turned from the counter, froze, and narrowed her eyes. Alex, laughing with a busboy, caught sight of her too. His mouth snapped shut mid-sentence, a flicker of confusion and unease crossing his face. The moment was almost too perfect. Sophia let the silence stretch, watching them squirm before walking purposefully toward the counter, setting her bag down. Emma recovered first, scoffing and crossing her arms. "What the hell are you doing here?" Sophia tilted her head. "You'll find out soon enough." Emma's smirk faltered, but before she could respond, a door at the back of the diner swung open. Mark stepped out, flipping through a stack of papers, irritation already etched on his face. "Emma, I need you to..." He stopped when he saw Sophia. His body went rigid, eyes flicking to Emma and Alex like he was trying to piece together the situation. "Sophia," he said slowly, "you don't work here anymore." Sophia smiled coldly. "Actually," she said, "I do." Mark blinked. "What?" Another voice cut in. "I believe I can clarify that." Every head in the room turned. Daniel Carter walked in, as calm and collected as ever, hands in the pockets of his tailored coat. He scanned the room slowly before landing on Mark. Emma's face paled. Alex looked like he wanted to vanish. Mark opened his mouth, but snapped it shut as Daniel stopped beside Sophia. Daniel's voice was steady and measured, but carried an undeniable authority. "As of this morning, Sunrise Diner has undergone some management changes," he announced. "Effective immediately, Mark, Your position is terminated." Emma gasped. Alex looked like he had been punched. Mark's face flushed an ugly shade of red. "Wait a damn minute." Daniel cut him off. "I've already heard enough from you." Mark's mouth snapped shut. Sophia almost felt bad. Almost. Daniel turned to the rest of the staff. "Some of you may be wondering what's going on. Let me make it simple. Last night, I visited this restaurant as a regular customer," he said. He let the words sink in. "What I witnessed was unacceptable. Nobody dared to speak." Daniel turned towards Sophia, gesturing with an air of finality. "This woman was the only employee who treated me with respect. The only one who did her job the way it should be done," he announced, his eyes sweeping over the room before hardening. "The rest of you? Some of you ignore me completely. Others made it clear you had no interest in serving certain customers at all. That ends today." A thick, uncomfortable silence settled over the restaurant. Every gaze followed Daniel as he turned back to Sophia. "Sophia is your new manager." Emma's jaw practically hit the floor. Alex's jaw clenched so hard, it looked painful. The busboy near the kitchen seemed like he wanted to burst into applause. Finally allowing herself to smile, Sophia turned to Emma and Alex. They stood frozen, struggling for words. "Well," she said, her tone deceptively light, "this is awkward." Emma's face twisted with fury. She turned to Daniel. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," Daniel replied smoothly. "Don't like it? You're free to leave." Emma's nostrils flared, but she snapped her mouth shut. She wasn't foolish enough to walk out and lose her paycheck. Alex, however, wasn't as smart. "This is bull." Daniel cut him off. "You're welcome to quit as well." Alex froze, his mouth opening and closing as if doing mental math. Emma shot daggers at Sophia, but Sophia only smiled. "Looks like we all have a lot of adjusting to do," she said, her tone light but firm. "So let's get to work." Emma stormed toward the coffee machine, mumbling under her breath. Alex grabbed a rag and began wiping down a table, his frustration written in every tense motion. Daniel gave Sophia a knowing nod. "I have a feeling you'll do just fine here." Sophia exhaled, watching the restaurant settle into its new reality, one where she was in charge. For the first time since she'd stepped foot in this building 3 years ago, she felt something new: respect. The next few weeks were as rocky as Sophia expected. Resistance came as no surprise, and she welcomed it. Emma barely spoke to her, her usual smugness replaced by a tight-lipped silence. Alex sulked through every shift, making it obvious he had no better options. Other staff who had thrived under the old culture of favoritism gritted their teeth and adjusted, or left entirely. A few stormed out without notice when it became clear that the unspoken rules about who deserved good service were gone for good. Sophia didn't lose sleep over it. She wasn't there to make friends. She was there to make things right. Her first days as manager were spent observing. She noted who genuinely worked hard, who resisted, and who just needed a nudge in the right direction. Slowly but surely, the tides began to turn. Want to see more stories like this? Like the video and subscribe to stay hooked. We're diving into tales of triumph, transformation, and tenacity. Tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? And what do you think about Sophia's journey? Do you believe in giving second chances or enforcing strict change? Let's hear your thoughts.